What if the real reason you're not living the life you want isn't a lack of talent, intelligence, opportunity, or even motivation, but a misalignment between your character and your habits? Imagine someone who is incredibly busy. Their calendar is packed. Their inbox never empties. They attend meetings, chase deadlines, juggle responsibilities. From the outside, they look productive, but internally, they feel fragmented. Relationships feel strained. Goals feel unclear. Success feels hollow. Now imagine someone else, just as busy, just as challenged, but centered, purpose-driven, clear about what matters, calm under pressure. Effective not just at work, but at home, in friendships, in leadership. They're not perfect, but they're aligned. What separates the two? This question lies at the heart of one of the most influential personal development books ever written, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. This isn't a book about quick fixes. It's not about productivity hacks or persuasion tricks. It's about principles. Timeless principles. It's about shifting from personality-driven techniques to character-driven transformation. And over the next hour, we're going to deeply unpack every major idea, every framework, and the deeper psychological foundation behind them. Because this book doesn't just teach habits, it teaches a way of being. Let's begin at the foundation. Stephen Covey wasn't just a motivational speaker. He was a professor, a researcher, and a student of human effectiveness. Before writing this book, he studied over 200 years of success literature. He noticed something fascinating. Earlier writings from thinkers like Benjamin Franklin emphasized character, integrity, humility, courage, justice, but more modern self-help literature focused heavily on personality, image, influence, techniques, public relations. Somewhere along the way, success advice shifted from who you are to how you appear. Covey believed that this shift was part of the problem. The core issue he addresses in the book is that many people chase surface-level success without anchoring themselves in deep principles. They attempt to improve performance without first improving paradigm, the lens through which they see the world. And that word paradigm is central to everything in this book. A paradigm is your mental map. It's how you interpret reality. Two people can experience the same event and interpret it completely differently because they see through different paradigms. Covey argues that lasting effectiveness requires what he calls a paradigm shift, a fundamental change in how we perceive ourselves, others, and the world. The 7 habits are not techniques. They are principles rooted in universal laws, fairness, integrity, responsibility, growth. And these habits move a person from dependence to independence, and finally, to interdependence. That progression is key. Dependence is when you rely on others to take care of you. Independence is when you take responsibility for yourself. Interdependence is when independent individuals collaborate powerfully together. The book is structured around this maturity continuum. The first 3 habits move you from dependence to independence. The next 3 move you from independence to interdependence. The final habit renews the entire system. By the end, you won't just understand the 7 habits. You'll understand why they're arranged exactly the way they are. Before Covey introduces the first habit, he discusses a profound concept, the space between stimulus and response. He explains that between what happens to us and how we react, there is a gap. In that gap lies our freedom to choose. Animals react instinctively. Humans can choose deliberately. That choice is where effectiveness begins. And this insight leads us to habit 1. Habit 1 is, be proactive. At first glance, this sounds simple. Take initiative. Don't wait around. But Covey's definition runs much deeper. To be proactive is to recognize that you are responsible for your own life. Your behavior is a product of your decisions, not your conditions. Reactive people blame circumstances. They say, if only my boss were different. If only my spouse understood. If only I had better opportunities. Their emotional life is controlled by external factors. Proactive people focus on what they can influence. Covey introduces the concept of the circle of concern and the circle of influence. The circle of concern contains everything you care about: politics, economy, weather, global events. The circle of influence contains the things you can directly affect. Reactive people focus on their circle of concern. They complain about things beyond their control. Proactive people focus on their circle of influence, their actions, choices, responses. Over time, focusing on influence expands that circle. Complaining shrinks it. This isn't naive optimism. It's psychological ownership. Proactivity also involves language. Reactive language sounds like "I can't," "I have to," "they made me." Proactive language sounds like "I choose," "I will," "I prefer." The shift from have to choose to changes your internal power dynamic. In real life, this habit plays out in leadership, parenting, and personal growth. When a team project fails, a reactive leader blames the market. A proactive leader examines what they could have done differently. When conflict arises in a relationship, a reactive partner defends. A proactive partner seeks understanding. Habit 1 is the foundation of personal freedom. Without it, none of the other habits work. Habit 2 builds on this internal responsibility. Begin with the end in mind. If habit 1 is about choice, habit 2 is about direction. Covey invites readers to imagine attending their own funeral. What would people say about you? What kind of person were you? What legacy did you leave? This exercise is not morbid, it's clarifying. So many people climb the ladder of success only to discover it's leaning against the wrong wall. Beginning with the end in mind means living according to a personal vision. It means defining your values before life defines them for you. Covey emphasizes writing a personal mission statement, not a corporate-sounding paragraph, but a deeply personal articulation of who you want to be and what you stand for. This habit rests on the principle that all things are created twice. First mentally, then physically. A building is designed before it's constructed. A speech is outlined before it's delivered. Your life is no different. If you don't consciously design it, you will unconsciously drift. This habit protects against drifting. In practical terms, this might mean defining roles in your life: parent, partner, leader, friend, and clarifying what effectiveness looks like in each. It might mean identifying core values such as integrity, compassion, excellence, or growth. A common misunderstanding is that having a mission statement makes life rigid. In reality, it provides stability. When circumstances change, principles remain. Habit 2 ensures that your daily actions align with your long-term identity. And that alignment leads directly to habit 3. Habit 3 is, put first things first. If habit 2 defines what matters, habit 3 operationalizes it. This is where Covey introduces one of the most powerful productivity frameworks ever created, the time management matrix. He divides activities into 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1 contains urgent and important tasks, crises, deadlines, pressing problems. Quadrant 2 contains important but not urgent tasks, planning, relationship building, personal growth, prevention. Quadrant 3 contains urgent but not important tasks, interruptions, some emails, other people's minor requests. Quadrant 4 contains neither urgent nor important activities, time wasters, trivial distractions. Most people spend too much time in Quadrant 1 and 3. They live in reaction mode. Highly effective people prioritize Quadrant 2. Why? Because Quadrant 2 activities prevent crises. They build long-term capacity. They strengthen relationships. They clarify direction. Exercise, strategic planning, meaningful conversations. These rarely scream for attention, but neglecting them creates future emergencies. Putting first things first means scheduling your priorities instead of prioritizing your schedule. It requires saying no to lesser things to protect greater ones. This habit demands discipline. It requires aligning daily behavior with personal values defined in habit 2. Without habit 3, habits 1 and 2 remain abstract ideals. With habit 3, principles become practice. At this point, Covey transitions from private victory and dependence to public victory, interdependence. Habit 4 is think win-win. This habit addresses relationships. Many people operate from one of 3 paradigms: win-lose, lose, win-lose. Win-lose is competitive and dominating. Lose-win is accommodating and submissive. Lose-lose is mutually destructive. Win-win seeks mutual benefit. It's not about being nice. It's about believing that life is not a zero-sum game. This requires what Covey calls an abundance mentality, the belief that there is enough success, recognition, and opportunity for everyone. Scarcity mentality breeds jealousy and competition. Abundance mentality fosters collaboration. In practical terms, win-win requires character, integrity, and maturity, and competence. You must know what you want, while caring about what others want. It also requires clear agreements. Covey describes win-win agreements built on 5 elements: desired results, guidelines, resources, accountability, and consequences. In workplaces, this shifts from micromanagement to trust-based delegation. In relationships, it transforms conflict from power struggle into problem-solving. Habit 4 builds the emotional bank account, a metaphor Covey uses to describe trust. Deposits are made through kindness, honesty, keeping commitments. Withdrawals happen through disrespect, dishonesty, neglect. Without a positive emotional bank account, win-win becomes impossible. Habit 5 deepens this relational shift. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Most people listen with the intent to reply. They filter conversations through their own experiences. They diagnose before they empathize. Covey introduces empathetic listening, listening to truly understand another person's perspective. He illustrates this with a powerful story of a man whose children were misbehaving on a subway. Other passengers were annoyed. But when the father explained that their mother had just died, the paradigm shifted instantly. Same behavior, completely different interpretation. Understanding changes everything. Habit 5 is built on the principle that trust precedes influence. If you want to be heard, you must first hear. Empathetic listening requires patience. It requires setting aside your own agenda temporarily. In leadership, this habit builds loyalty. In marriage, it builds intimacy. In friendships, it builds depth. A common misunderstanding is that empathy equals agreement. It doesn't. You can deeply understand someone's position without adopting it. Once understanding is achieved, then you can express your own viewpoint clearly and respectfully. This habit transforms communication from debate to dialogue. Habit 6 is synergize. Synergy means that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. When independent individuals collaborate with mutual respect and understanding, creative solutions emerge that none could have produced alone. Synergy is not compromise. Compromise splits the difference. Synergy creates a third alternative, something better. This requires valuing differences rather than merely tolerating them. In teams, synergy leverages diverse strengths. In families, it harnesses varied personalities. In communities, it builds innovation. But synergy only emerges when habits 4 and 5 are in place. Without win-win thinking and empathetic listening, differences create division rather than innovation. Synergy is creative cooperation. It's messy. It requires openness, but it produces breakthroughs. Finally, habit 7, sharpen the saw. This habit sustains all the others. Covey tells a story of a man sawing a tree for hours without stopping. When advised to sharpen his saw, he responds, "I don't have time." Sharpening the saw means renewing yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Exercise, learning, reflection, relationships, purpose. Without renewal, effectiveness declines. This habit reinforces the principle of continuous growth. It prevents burnout, and it completes the cycle. Now, let's step back and examine the deeper philosophy. The 7 habits are built on universal principles: fairness, integrity, human dignity. Covey believed these principles are not culturally invented, but discovered. The shift from dependence to independence to interdependence mirrors human development. Children depend. Adolescents seek independence. Mature adults embrace interdependence. Psychologically, the book challenges victim mentality. It affirms agency. Strategically, it shifts focus from short-term results to long-term character. It also integrates internal and external success. You cannot build strong teams without strong character. You cannot build strong character without self-awareness. This is why the book endures. Of course, there are limitations. Some critics argue that the book's tone can feel idealistic. Living fully in Quadrant 2 is difficult in chaotic environments. Win-win may not always be achievable in competitive systems. Writing mission statements may feel abstract to action-oriented personalities. But these critiques often highlight the difficulty of principle-centered living, not its irrelevance. The habits require effort. They demand introspection. They challenge ego. That's precisely why they work. So what remains, after all 7 habits are understood? You realize that effectiveness is not about speed, it's about alignment. Alignment between values and behavior. Between intention and action. Between independence and collaboration. You begin to see that real success is less about techniques and more about character. You understand that your response to circumstances shapes your destiny more than the circumstances themselves. And perhaps, most importantly, you recognize that growth is a continuous process. The 7 habits are not a checklist. They are a practice, a way of living. So, as we close, consider this. Are you living reactively or proactively? Are you drifting or designing? Are you busy or truly effective? Are your relationships transactional or are you running on dull tools or sharpening the saw? The transformation this book offers is subtle but profound. It doesn't promise overnight change. It promises gradual, principle-centered growth. And in a world obsessed with shortcuts, that might be the most radical message of all. Because effectiveness isn't achieved by mastering time. It's achieved by mastering yourself. And when you master yourself, you don't just succeed, you matter. And that, ultimately, is the highest form of effectiveness.